Hey, it's Tuesday, April 4th, Command HQ here. As always, we have Deep State Double Agent, Agent X, uh, riding shotgun here. So Trump has actually now physically been arrested. And Agent X, I mean, you're here, you're seeing this. This is incredible news, right?
Well, it just shows that this country is not what it was. We've been taken over by um, low IQ, woke, morally depraved, twisted, affirmative action admits within our government um, that have no respect for the Constitution, for the rule of law, that they can put their own, they can basically weaponize the judicial system against who they perceive as their political and cultural enemies. And we've now seen Donald Trump sacrificed. And like what I always tell you, it's not the conviction that harms somebody; it's the charge, right? He had the potential to go down as one of the greatest presidents in history. No new wars, right? Uh, One of the best, most prosperous economies, and that was with a presidency where they literally drug him through the mud with the Mueller investigation, with impeachment hoax, with Congress going after his tax return, something that he even fails to mention and forgets about. Congress, the Manhattan DA Cyrus Big Gay Vance going after his tax returns, um, and literally drug him through the mud during his entire presidency. Not to let's not even mention the coup, right? That was probably engineered to and released to halt his presidency to kill the economy. But now they're going after the man because they don't like what he stands for. And regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, this is a bad day for America. We've just lost all our credibility throughout the world when we can take a former leader and basically reduce him down and put him in the same seat as a child rapist, a murderer, um, or somebody who hops the subway fare. You know, that's that's the same position that they put Harvey Weinstein in. And if you look at Bragg's videos, Alvin Bragg's videos, his campaign videos, and his websites on the Wayback Machine, what does he do? He talks about convicting Trump. He talks about how he sued Trump over 100 times, and he sued Trump's kids. And he talks about Trump in the same breath that he talks about Harvey Weinstein. It's ridiculous. The fact that Alvin Bragg, an affirmative action, low IQ individual, could put a former president of the United States and the leading candidate, not just in the Republican Party, but in the race, in a position like this, just shows how perverted and distorted our system of government has become. It's become weaponized, and we've let low IQ affirmative action admits like Alvin Bragg do it. And it's just sad.
There's so many things to talk about with this, but Taco Pino has been on a media tour. I think we had a little discussion
And he
about
just
what.
fucked he just fucked Trump big time. He fucked him. Takapina is a fucking Guido from New York. Guido. Oh, everybody's making fun of him because he got into that spat with Ari Melcher and tried to rip the paper out of his hand. But what did he do tonight? He went on Hannity and immediately fucked Trump. I mean, the biggest hole in that indictment, typically these prosecutors, when they file an indictment, they file speaking indictments. That's the tradition where they go through the facts of the crime and how each fact meets the element of a crime, meets each element of a crime. Well, of course, Bragg didn't do that because he's a low IQ affirmative action admit. Um, and instead, he just recited, the statute 32 times. And the fatal flaw in that is that in order to elevate it from a misdemeanor to a felony, that the falsifying business records, you have to falsify a business record in furtherance of another crime. And in that indictment, an element of the crime is you have to do it in furtherance of another crime. But in the indictment, they don't specify anywhere what the other crime is. They just leave it vague that he did it in furtherance of another crime. Well, that on its face is a defective indictment, because how can you have reasonable notice of what you're being charged with when you don't know the facts underlying the in furtherance of the other crime? What was the other crime that Donald Trump committed? I mean, that's an essential element of the crime. In Tacopino, first at Alvin Bragg's press conference earlier today, he got up and he said, "Well, the law doesn't require me to specify that." The fuck it does. Just go do a simple search on Bloomberg, and it'll say that an indictment has to give reasonable notice to the defendant of every element of the crime. How do you have reasonable notice of the crime that you're being charged with when you don't know the facts of the in furtherance of the other crime? I mean, that's ridiculous. They can just go to trial now and make up whatever the hell they want. I mean, again, we go back to the idea that it's not the charge, it's not the conviction that harms somebody, it's the charge. They wanted to hang this over Donald Trump because it's the charge that's damaging, and they can do it with just vague statutory language, no specificity, and require Trump to expend probably millions of dollars to now fight this on a vague, unconstitutional indictment. But Tacopino went on Hannity today and fucking agreed with Bragg. Said that Bragg didn't have to specify what that in furtherance of the other crime was, and it's just a norm for a prosecutor to do. I mean, come on, Tacopino, you're better than that. I mean, even if that was the weakest argument in the world, you still preserve it because it's an element of the crime. How do you even attack an indictment when they failed to allege facts to an essential element of the crime, um, uh, where you're accused of 32 felonies? Essential facts of your alleged criminal conduct that you can't even respond to because you don't know what it is they're alleged what they've alleged that you've done. It's ridiculous. And for Tacopina to go on Hannity and give that away, I mean, Trump should fire this idiot immediately. Should literally fire this Guido from New York immediately and hire somebody with freaking 2 cents.
Well, don't you think that that's also uh, part of Taco Pino's modus operandi in that court? I mean, he's so used to defending defendants in this situation that it's just part of the whole practice that he's kind of built up.
Well, I think you and I talked, or I had sent you a message over the weekend, and I had told you that the latest episode of Law and Order basically it's I mean it's always sort of normalized. Law and Order has always normalized corrupt police behavior and corrupt prosecutorial behavior, but I mean, it was so overt this last week. It was mind-boggling that the prosecutor openly withheld exculpatory evidence, and kind of the assistant ADA sort of challenged him on it, and he didn't. He like wouldn't budge. I mean, it was bad. And they're normalizing this, right? They're just normalizing corruption in society. But when you get, um, if you start interacting with these defense attorneys, you'll quickly learn that these prosecutors always cut corners. They always skirt the ethical rules every single time. They never follow the rules as they're required to do. They're always lying. They're always making something up. They're never following the rule correctly. They're always doing some unethical, shady shit. And these defense attorneys never call them out on it. Why? Because they're in the same system that basically chews people up and spits them out, right? They don't want to piss the ADAs off or the district attorneys, the assistant district attorneys off because they don't want to get them pissed for the next case and the next case and the next. So they always let them skirt the line and do shady shit. And then they just tell their clients, oh, that's just the way it's done. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And these defense attorneys like Takapino spend. I mean, this. I'm glad that Trump brought on this white collar guy because he's actually used to dealing with. Um, he's not down there dealing with. These low level prosecutors always skirting the ethical rules um, and the statutes. He's dealing with more high profile, more sophisticated attorneys, but and more I guess people who have a better pedigree. But this Takapina, he's used to this stuff. He's one of these animals that basically you know grifts and chews up clients, basically sells them out to the district attorney's office and then, gets your little plea bargain and sends you off on your way. Meanwhile, he's pocketed, $150,000 to defend you. I mean, he's a loser. He doesn't have the best pedigree. You can tell when he speaks, he's just a Guido from New York, and he shouldn't be anywhere near Trump's case. If Trump was smart, he'd fire the hell out of him right now and go find a white shoe firm, white collar defense in a firm in D.C. to defend him.
Does Trump need a modern day Roy Cohn right now?
He needs somebody, right? I mean, the problem is that nobody wants to touch his cases
Mm-hmm.
because they're
Instant
instantly a
disbarment.
target. Well, yeah, instant targets for disciplinary action. So you saw they immediately went after Giuliani. I think last week, Jenna Ellis, she agreed to a public censure and conceded that she'd made multiple false statements about the election. I mean, if she hadn't conceded that, she would have been disbarred. So these people don't want to represent Trump. I mean, they sanctioned Elena Haba $1 million, and in that order from Judge Middlebrooks in the Southern District of Florida, what he do? He combed through her website and cited all
Oh my
her
God.
promotional material, listened to every interview she gave on Hannity and Tucker, and quoted it in the order, and got offended because she called the judge a Clinton appointed judge on Hannity and sanctioned her for it. Said that she basically lied, filed a bogus complaint. Don't make anything. They'll make anything up. Um, they'll twist anything, and if you're a Trump attorney, you're an instant target. They will go comb through everything you've said. They'll comb through everything you've published. They'll go through your trash. They'll check your dirty underwear to see if you got shit streaks. They'll do whatever they can to sully you and strip you of your livelihood.
Yeah, it's true. So I was just bringing up the Middlebrooks order against Haba for sanctions, so I put that on the stream board. But speaking of corrupt prosecutors in this disciplinary process, Kevin Doyle. Okay, so Kevin Doyle is a grievance disciplinary counsel in in New York who was responsible for disbarring Rudy Giuliani. I mean, do you think that there's now evidence that he is potentially trying to discipline other Trump attorneys?
Yes, there is. There's pretty significant evidence that he's targeting other Trump attorneys. And what's the problem with Kevin Doyle? So let's start out. He was a death penalty advocate or a death penalty defense attorney in New York and then in Alabama. And you can go read the things that he's published where he has said that when somebody was charged with a death penalty case, he didn't care if they were innocent or guilty. His only objective was to represent them as a public defender and get them to plead so to take the death penalty off the table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he didn't give a shit if they were innocent. He just wanted the death penalty off the table. Why? Because it conflicted with his quote unquote Catholic beliefs. I mean, you know, if you're an attorney and you're a defense attorney, and particularly a publicly appointed defense attorney like that, your main goal, right, is to best serve your client, and if that's going to trial to try to prove your client's innocence in the face of a death penalty, uh, you have to do it. It's not your place to sit there and hamstring them and twist their arm into pleading guilty for something that they potentially didn't do. So we
Mm-hmm.
know this guy's a loser and unethical just from that. And you can go and read the various articles published about him in the books and the conference speeches he's given about it, and he's pretty flagrant and flamboyant about it. But to make this even worse, this guy donated thousands of dollars to the Family Working Party of New York. What is the Family Working Party of New York? This is easily searchable in the New York campaign contribution database. You can go online and do it yourself. Kevin M. Doyle, 26 Nyack Road, Washington, 26 Washington Avenue, Nyack, New York is his address if you want to cross reference it. Um, you can easily look it up where he's donated thousands of dollars to the Family Working Party of New York. And what's the Family Working Party of New York? It's a quote unquote progressive ultra left wing organization, political party in New York that advocates for progressive candidates. So essentially, what it is a left wing Marxist political party, third party in New York that has never gotten more than 1% of the vote. But he's given thousands and thousands of dollars to it. So we know that this guy's a left wing loon. So we know he's unethical. So there's an attorney in New York. His name's David Evan Shore. This guy has been found guilty of misappropriating funds from client estates. He's been found guilty of lying under oath. He's been found guilty of falsifying business records. He's been found guilty of deliberately sabotaging legal proceedings, of abusing his wife. He filed a, you've got it pulled up right there. He filed a bogus lawsuit against a court appointed psychiatrist in his son's custody case and was labeled the McDonald's dad. Well, Kevin Doyle went after David Shore, and then David Shore had agreed to destroy evidence in another case that Kevin Doyle was prosecuting that David Shore was involved in. And they just let him off the hook. And meanwhile, David Shore has falsified notary stamps. He has unlawfully purchased land in Cuba and done so in order to buy a hostel, in which his business partner alleged that, who was a Cuban citizen, alleged that uh, he purchased the hostel to traffic underage women, underage girls. This guy's a bigger predator than Jeffrey Epstein. He recently used his 90-year-old mother, as a straw man. to try to purchase land in Cuba, and then she passed away, and he failed to inform the court after he sued the American Arbitration Association in his mother's name, and failed to inform the court that she died, even though he was representing her, so he could keep the case going. Just a huge loser. And he was taking kickbacks from the American Family Civil Liberties Union, who were basically grifting people, these family law litigants, into paying huge sums of money for their advice, even though they have no attorneys involved with them. But they would give kickbacks to Shore to to represent these people, and um, uh, which is unethical, and they didn't do shit. The Doyle and the chief attorney DePico didn't do shit about it. So they have all these things racking up against David Shore, and they refuse to prosecute him. Why? Because Kevin Doyle and Jorge DePico, the chief attorney for the grievance committee, because they're complicit in Shore's activities. That's exactly why. So they have somebody like this who falsifies documents, falsifies court orders, who was slammed by the Southern District of New York as a serial fabricator and a serial filer of meritless lawsuits. So they don't go after this guy, but they go after Rudy Giuliani and the rest of Trump's attorneys. And Kevin Doyle refuses to go back after Shore because he cut a deal, and he's probably, Kevin Doyle's probably flying down to Cuba to visit that hostel. I would bet. Um, so getting back to Kevin Doyle, huge loser, donates to a Marxist party. Um, Basically got fired in Alabama, came back, and ran the death penalty public defender in New York until the death penalty was um, repealed in New York. And this loser couldn't get a job in a private firm, couldn't go out and hang a shingle, couldn't go out and get a real job anywhere. So what does he do? He goes and works for the Attorney Grievance Committee, the biggest skunk work organization in New York, that selectively prosecutes attorneys, targets attorneys that anybody who speaks out against the corrupt system, um, and protects the corrupt judges and the corrupt attorneys who exploit the system and their clients. Um, uh, uh, and so this guy is now going after all the Trump attorneys. So what did he do? He published this article that you have up on the screen, in which he called Trump a race. This was in 2019, right before the 2020 election. A sopistic man boy, an overt racist, misogynist, and um, just dug in to President Trump and showed his bias, right? Showed his bias. And then they let this loser, this partisan hack, this fundamentally low IQ, um, we can't call him an affirmative action admit, but we can probably say that Daddy's money bought him into UVA, because he doesn't have the brains or the IQ to work. He's never worked at a law firm. He's always had to live off the government dole, and in pretty shady um, offices too. In the Capital Defender's office, the death penalty public defender, and now the Attorney Grievance Committee. This guy has lied and he's feigned that he's had cancer to get publicity, when he had did, had basically the most treatable form of cancer anybody could be diagnosed with. It was sad. Did it for sympathy because nobody liked him. Um, you can see him here. Looks like a dork, major loser, just a loser in life. So now he's devoted his career because he couldn't get a job at a big law firm or even a little law firm or even have the guts to hang his own shingle. He's now devoted his life to going after Trump attorneys. And he went after Rudy Giuliani after, what, 6, 8 months prior, calling Trump a racist in a published article, an open published article. He called Trump a racist, a misogynist, and um, a sopolastic man boy. And if you read some of the model rules for prosecutors, right, it says, and he wrote it in the Jesuit Review, right? It says right here, it has long been held that the quote role of a public prosecutor is not merely to convict, but to foster the trust of the public in the justice system. People v. Barker, Fourth Department in New York. And it goes on to say, in fulfilling that function, it is essential that a prosecutor avoid even the appearance of impropriety. So if you're writing articles calling Trump a racist and a misogynist and a sopolistic man boy, 6 months before you prosecute his attorney and have him disbarred without a hearing, how in the hell? I mean, that seems like a political prosecution. I mean, is there nobody else in that office who could have brought the case against Rudy Giuliani? No, you have to have somebody who's openly and outwardly not just criticized Trump but slandered him. Slandered him. I mean, come on. Um, we can go on here. Uh, let's see. Hold on, I want
Well,
to
let me
pull up
just
the
say
model
this.
rules.
So,